Audio Jungle.
What is so objectionable that it is worth holding the entire government hostage?
Negotiating with President Trump is like negotiating with Jell-O.
We look petty. We care more about the party flag than the American flag.
I urge my colleagues here in the House and the Senate to make sure that we fund this government.
This is what democracy looks like.
I was a Me Too. I am aware of all the women who are still in silence.
I want my girls to feel empowered.
This year was about directing that voice to action, and that action being what will happen later this year, the elections.
This is New Day Weekend with Victor Blackwell and Christy Paul.
Good morning to you. Always grateful to see you on a Sunday morning. It is this morning, don't shoot the messenger, but blame, bickering, and very little bipartisanship, it seems. We are 30 hours into this government shutdown and still no signs of progress from lawmakers on a deal.
And those lawmakers, we should note, are still being paid despite the government shutdown. And the same cannot be said for hundreds of thousands of government workers, including military personnel, who don't know when they'll see their next paycheck. Now, despite this, after a day of meetings on Capitol Hill, the only announcements coming from party leaders are the attacks on one another.
Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says Democrats created a, quote, hostage situation. Minority Leader Chuck Schumer calls dealing with the White House like negotiating with Jell-O. That's quote. Both houses back in session in just hours from now.
CNN's Abby Phillip is live in Washington. We're going to start, though, with CNN's Lauren Fox on Capitol Hill. Lauren, I mean, we're starting now day 2 of the shutdown. Any indications of a compromise that's going to come to some fruition as it relates to getting the government going again?
Well, lawmakers are dug in on Capitol Hill this morning, and so far no one is blinking. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and Minority Leader Chuck Schumer didn't even meet yesterday to try to find a way out of this mess. Instead, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell still plans to bring forward a 3-week spending bill that would keep the government open and fully fund the children's health insurance program, hoping to pressure Democrats to come around this time. But Democrats are still insisting on immigration negotiations. Here's what Schumer had to say about the list of his demands.
Do you know what number CR this is? This has been going on for 6 months. They've had a 3-month CR, they've had a 1-month CR, they've had a 2-week CR. If we do this, if we keep kicking the can down the table, our soldiers will be hurt, our children will be hurt, our disaster recipients will be hurt, everyone will be hurt. If this was the first time that they used this CR approach, your question would be reasonable.
And we should admit here that yesterday a group of about 20 bipartisan lawmakers sat down trying to hammer out a deal, trying to find a way to bring ideas to their leadership and break this government shutdown. Of course, no results yet. And here's what Senator Lindsey Graham had to say about who will be blamed if both sides of the aisle cannot get it together and find a way out of this government shutdown.
I think we look petty. We look that we care more about the party flag than the American flag. I don't know what to tell people. All I can tell them is that there are a lot of young men and women in mountaintops and jungles working really hard to keep us safe that are being denied resources because of sequestration and CRs. There are 800,000 people who are working, who have jobs, teachers, people in the military. Their lives are going to come undone in a matter of weeks, not months. And we're sitting up here blaming each other.
And we have to say that yesterday, lawmakers were feeling like Monday is the real deadline. That is when about 800,000 federal workers will be forced to stay home, and the pain of the government shutdown across the country will continue to be felt.
All right, Lauren Fox, thank you so much.
Well, tomorrow, as Lauren said, there are a lot of people who will not be able to go to work, or if they go to work, they won't be paid and don't know when they'll see their next paycheck. CNN's Abby Phillip joins us live from the White House. Abby, so many people will be affected. There is now the finger pointing, or has been going on for some time, of who is responsible. The question is, who's in charge of this shutdown?
Well, hi, Victor and Christy. You know, yesterday on the Hill, as Lauren just pointed out, there was a lot of activity, maybe even spinning in place. But here at the White House, it was sort of an exercise in communications and messaging about this. Yesterday, the White House released some photos of the president on the phone. We know he talked to Republican leaders, but did not talk to Democrats. And also, he marked the one-year anniversary of his inauguration, but mostly with his communications staff, who had spent the day out here talking about why Democrats are to blame. Now, there is one person who actually has a job to do over this weekend, and that is OMB Director Mick Mulvaney. He talked a little bit about that in an appearance yesterday.
Obviously, I'm heavily involved with this, Sean, is that the Office of Management and Budget is charged with, sort of implementing, running a shutdown. In fact, I found out the first time last night that the person who technically shuts the government down is me, which is kind of cool.
Well, you know, that messaging is a little bit tricky because there are a lot of people, as you noted, Victor, coming back, waking up on Monday morning and not knowing whether they're going to be working or not, or receiving a paycheck. At the same time, Republicans are pivoting to the sort of blame game phase of this. The Republican National Committee released a really tough ad yesterday, a web ad that blames Democrats for the crimes of illegal immigrants. Listen.
That's illegal immigrant Luis Bracamontes, charged with murdering 2 police officers. It's pure evil. President Trump is right. Build the wall. Deport criminals. Stop illegal immigration now. Democrats who stand in our way will be complicit in every murder committed by illegal immigrants. President Trump will fix our border and keep our families safe.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
It's important to note that that ad, we have no indication that it's actually going to air on television, but it's indicated to send a message to Democrats. At the same time, there is no end in sight for this shutdown. We'll be waiting to see what the White House plans to do today to bring an end to this crisis. Victor and Christy.
Abby Phillip for us at the White House. Abby, thanks so much.
All right, Errol Lewis, CNN political commentator and political anchor for Spectrum News, with us now, as well as Siraj Hashmi, Washington Examiner's commentary writer and editor. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us. Let's listen here real quickly to what Lindsey Graham said in full, because there's a couple of nuggets we want to pull out of this. Let's listen.
There is no defense to what we're doing. The DACA population is very sympathetic in the eyes of the public. The military is beloved in the eyes of the public. Most people want to fund the government. The president decided to give the Congress 6 months to find a DACA solution. That was plenty enough time. The president needs to find a deal he can live with and stick with it. I think we look petty. We look that we care more about the party flag than the American flag. And I voted no last night because I think continuing this madness for 30 days is too much. Now that I got a commitment by the leader that we're going to take up immigration, which is a major move in the right direction, I feel February the 8th is an appropriate time. I don't know what to tell people. All I can tell them is that there are a lot of young men and women in mountaintops and jungles working really hard to keep us safe, that are being denied resources because of sequestration and CRs. There are 800,000 people who are working, who have jobs, teachers, people in the military. Their lives are going to come undone in a matter of weeks, not months. And we're sitting up here blaming each other. The only thing I can tell you from my point of view is that when 2 politicians try to blame each other for doing something that is stupid in the eyes of the public, good luck with that.
Okay, so Errol, yeah, I'm sure it stood out to you as well. He said, now that I got a commitment by the leader that we're going to take up immigration, which is a major move in the right direction, I feel February 8th is an appropriate time. Is he signaling, just to clarify, a commitment on immigration debate in the Senate regardless of White House opposition?
Well, he's saying that that's what the leader has told him will happen. Whether or not that actually goes down is something that, you really can't say. The reality is, for that to have any meaning, you have to keep in mind it's not just the Majority Leader McConnell who would determine it. He could calendar it. But the reality is Chuck Schumer and the Democrats will have to be involved. These are 60-vote margins by which you have to make these things happen. And unless there's a full and true conversation, we're right back where we started. We're right back where we are right now, where you have a government shutdown, you have an undone or unfinished, at least, incomplete DACA arrangement that nobody seems to like, and you have a White House that's kind of standing off in the wings watching the whole thing happen. So, Lindsey Graham, I think, has shown a side of him that probably a lot of us who have watched him for years really never saw before, which is somebody who is the reasonable guy, the adult in the room, and somebody who's been working toward what could be a reasonable compromise. Reasonable being defined as something that leaves everybody just a little bit unhappy.
So, Siraj, we know that McConnell said they're hoping to get a vote around 1 a.m. Tomorrow morning. Most likely on this proposal by Graham. It would fund the government until February 8th. It would reauthorize the children's health insurance program. It would give money to states who are recovering from storms, and it would promise to hold votes on an immigration deal. What is the plausibility of something like this passing? And even if it does pass, what position does that put the president in?
Well, right now we have no idea, given the fact that Democrats haven't whipped up the votes to at least vote for this measure. And we have to remember here that this, again, the 60-vote margin, it differs from reconciliation rules, which only need 51 votes, which is why you saw so many laws passed in the past year. What we did see, though, is that this is basically sowing the seeds of distrust in Washington. This is really, there's no one who gains or wins from this. Pretty much everyone loses. And what we're seeing from Democrats who are trying to stuff spending, non-spending measures into a spending bill via DACA, via CHIP. I mean, these are things that Republicans have, they've given away, at least on CHIP. They've conceded on that. But it's really DACA that they've seen this dug-in kind of trench-like warfare we're seeing, like World War I almost, trying to get this moved through. And I don't see a vote right now happening. I can see this happen at least another week.
Yeah. Is a vow, Errol, to deal with immigration later, is it believable? Are there assurances that need to be tied to that?
Well, the Democrats don't believe that that's a good faith effort, and that's why the government is shut down right now. DACA was supposed to expire in March, and while there were people who were kind of falling out of the program on a daily basis, it wasn't going to really hit critical mass for another month or so. What the Democrats basically have signaled is that they're not going to wait for that month to come. They're not going to let that come down to the wire. They were going to sort of plant their feet in the sand and say, here and no further. And as a negotiating stance, it makes perfect sense. As a political reality, it brings us right to where we are. It says we're going to do today what Republicans were sort of angling to have as a debate at the end of February.
Siraj, if either side bends here, whatever side that might be, whether it be Republican, whether it be Democrat, if either side bends and something can come to fruition so people can go to work and get paid tomorrow, are they seen as heroes or are they seen as weak?
I think if anyone bends, it's going to be establishment Republicans who will concede on at least trying to vote for a spending measure to at least fund the government. And again, remember, this is a partial shutdown, so there are still people who are getting paid in all of this. But with respect to the military, with respect to CHIP, with respect to federal employees who are going to be furloughed, those establishment Republicans who previously voted no, you saw Lindsey Graham, you're going to see a few of them who are actually going to come to the other side. Democrats have nothing to lose at this point in terms of votes when it comes to the midterm elections. This is really all a boat and pony show to try to get the voters' attention come November. And I can see Democrats keeping their foot in the sand and saying this is where we draw the line.
All right. Errol Lewis, Siraj Hashmi, we appreciate your insight, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the battle over government funding, who's to blame, depends on which side you ask, of course. Well, Jake Chapman's going to do that. Senators Rand Paul and Bernie Sanders are with him exclusively to weigh in on State of the Union this morning at 9 Eastern. So while the government is locked in this stalemate over the shutdown, Vice President Pence is on his Middle East tour. And he met with Jordan's King Abdullah a short time ago.
King Abdullah says the decision to move the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem risks destabilizing the region. Yesterday, the VP met Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi pledging America's support in the war on terror. His next stop is Tel Aviv.
Well, the Taliban has claimed responsibility for a 12-hour siege at Kabul's Intercontinental Hotel. 6 victims, 4 attackers were killed. This is the video we have taken during the siege of people escaping out balconies using bed sheets. The ministry said 153 people, including 41 foreigners, had been rescued from that hotel. Well, thousands of people are hitting the streets this weekend, not only in the U.S., in other parts of the world, and they're standing up for equality, social and political change during women's marches in America and around the world. We're going to take you to London next.
A group of voters, female voters, black women, has been crucial in recent Democratic wins. Coming up, I speak with a group of voters in Detroit, what they say is driving their turnout and how it could be so important in this year's midterm.
Anger and resistance.
From the beginning, we've always said it's not about President Trump. It is, President Trump is only a symptom of the disease, right? And so our goal is to really change that culture and the power structure as a whole.
So thousands of women, even men there, as you heard, marching this weekend all over the U.S. to mark the 1-year anniversary of the National Women's March. Another march is set for 1 o'clock today, in fact, in Las Vegas.
And the goal this year is to further transition this demonstration into political action. Here's CNN's Alexander Marquardt to explain.
Hundreds of thousands protesting for the second year of Donald Trump's presidency. Mostly women and girls, but also men and boys, marching not just for gender equality, but for issues ranging from gay rights to immigration and religious freedom. Across the country and around the world, they took to the streets.
I think that it's important to show Congress and the president that we need to be heard.
The demonstrators trying to keep the momentum of the movement going. Many of them hoping to turn this enthusiasm into electoral victories in this year's midterm elections. In New York, crowds gathered near a Trump hotel, spilling into Central Park. Among them, Elda McQuaid, a refugee from Cuba.
But to be accepted and welcome when you have nowhere else to go and no other recourse in this world is a very big thing. And for now to say you're not welcome here is against everything this country stands for.
In Philadelphia, women drummed their message. Chicago members of the cast of Hamilton sang to hundreds of thousands. And in Los Angeles, celebrities like actresses Natalie Portman and Viola Davis were among the protesters.
I am speaking today, not just for the Me Too's, because I was a Me Too, but when I raise my hand, I am aware of all the women who are still in silence.
In Washington, D.C., crowds marched to the White House. House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi pushing for more women to get involved.
Nothing is more wholesome to a government, to a country, to a society than the increased participation of women.
So the impact of the movement in America, it's really quite expansive. There are events, in fact, today in Paris and London.
CNN's Erin McLaughlin is following this, and she is joining us live now from London. How big are the crowds there?
Hi, Victor. Well, let me just step out of the shot here and show you the scene here in London. This just across the way from Downing Street. Hundreds of people have turned out despite damp and cold weather to send a message to the powers that be that time is up. The organizers put out a statement prior to, you can hear them cheering there, prior to this rally, saying that this is about a wide range of societal ills, from racism to sexual harassment to bigotry. They want all of those issues tackled. They even referenced Grenfell Tower, which was a tower block fire that happened earlier in 2017, killing over over 70 people. They're calling for justice for those victims as well. We're currently hearing from a range of speakers, members of parliament, as well as activists. We also heard from Helen Pankhurst, the great-granddaughter of Emmeline Pankhurst. She was a suffragette 100 years ago. Emmeline Pankhurst led the movement to secure the vote for women here in the United Kingdom. And Helen Pankhurst making the point today that she wants to see that similar kind of change across the UK and around the world 100 years later. So some pretty powerful speeches here as well, Victor.
All right, Aaron McLaughlin for us there in London. Thank you so much.
Well, he's a senior advisor to the president. He has access to the most sensitive intelligence in the world. But according to reports, Jared Kushner still doesn't have full security clearance after a year in the White House. So what does that mean for what he's doing? And we're so glad to have you with us here. 6:28 is the time. I'm Christy Paul.
I'm Victor Blackwell. Happy Sunday to you.
So we're 30 hours now into this government shutdown.
Okay. And we're all waiting now to see how far politicians are going to meet one another, get in front of the microphones, to blame one another, but still no sign of a deal.
Remember, those lawmakers are still getting paid. Despite this shutdown. That's not the case for hundreds of thousands of other government workers, though. Senate
Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says Democrats have created a hostage situation. Minority Leader Chuck Schumer compares dealing with the White House to negotiating with Jell-O.
Now, inside that White House, he's been charged by the president with brokering Middle East peace, reforming the criminal justice system, and fixing the opioid crisis. A hefty amount of work.
Yeah, but according to reports, a year into the administration now, senior advisor Jared Kushner still does not have full security clearance. As some have said, if it were not for his family ties to the president, he probably wouldn't be able to work in the White House. CNN national security analyst Samantha Vinograd joins us now. She served under two presidents. She was a member of the National Security Council during the Obama administration. Sam, good morning to you.
Good morning.
No full clearance after a year for a senior official, as Christy said, has a lot on his plate, the secretary of everything, as he's been referred to here. What does this tell us about what the FBI thinks of Kushner and why this is taking so long?
Well, let's just be clear about something up front. This is not normal. This is highly unprecedented. Because of his rank, Jared Kushner's clearance would have been expedited. It would have been prioritized because of the hefty issues that the president has asked him to work on. So this is not a question of the community not paying attention to his application. And let's also be clear on the fact that Jared Kushner is an ideal foreign intelligence target. He has the access, he has the influence, and frankly, he has the inexperience that makes him an ideal target for foreign intelligence services like China and Russia. Now, clearances often get held up because the investigating agency has questions, there are gaps, and often this relates to some kind of secret. So this could be anything from a gambling debt or an affair or drug use to undisclosed or misreported contacts with a foreign country, a foreign official, financial transactions that have been undisclosed or misreported, or any kind of secret that a foreign intelligence service could use against that person to try to get information or to influence policy.
Okay, so this is interesting. Just in the overnight hours, President Trump retweeted a tweet from the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, and here's what it says. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu expresses his appreciation for Jared Kushner and J.D. Greenblatt, by the way, who's an assistant to President Trump, for the efforts that they've made behind the scenes that have helped to end the crisis with Jordan. What does it say to you that we have the Prime Minister of Israel publicly thanking Jared Kushner? Does it give more credence to the work that he's doing in light of all the criticism that comes to him?
I don't think it does. I think that experience matters, and I think that's particularly relevant when we look at the Middle East peace process. Jared Kushner has been charged with this portfolio, and it's very clear from the fact that the United States has been shut out of the peace process that this isn't going well. And I think it's always positive to bring in fresh eyes. But based upon the halt in the peace process, it's clear that this is not going well. And we know that Jared Kushner, for either as a result of negligence, ineptitude, hubris, or some other kind of malign intent, frankly has made a lot of counterintelligence errors. He's met alone with foreign officials. He has mixed business with his role in the transition and policy discussions. And these are all very concerning. And in my opinion, I think that it is entirely appropriate for Congress to insist, Congress has oversight over the intelligence community, that Jared Kushner no longer has access to the PDB or to top-secret compartmentalized intelligence until he has a full clearance.
All right, let's move to the Russia investigation. Republicans on the House Intelligence Committee are considering releasing this classified memo you may be seen on Twitter. Release the memo. That
Thanks
hashtag.
to Russia, I have, yes.
Yes, okay. Which Republicans, say that details the FBI abuses, surveillance programs. Should that be released? Should the public see that?
I think that's a hard no from me. I think that if there are allegations of abuse of Pfizer or any other intelligence mechanism, Congress has oversight mechanisms, and they should certainly be investigated in a bipartisan way. But that's not what this is. This is somebody writing a memo, sharing it with members of his party, and not allowing members on the other side of the aisle to call up witnesses, to corroborate information, and to see if any of the accusations are accurate. And there is a reason why Russian trolls and Russian bots have been retweeting the Release the Memo hashtag, and WikiLeaks has been offering a reward for the memo. And that's because Russia agrees, frankly, that releasing the memo would just cause confusion among the American public. We should allow any allegations to be investigated, but releasing the memo at this time would just be sending the American public and, frankly, Congress down a conspiracy rabbit hole.
All right. Samantha Vinograd, we appreciate your insight. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, as the Women's March returns to Washington and really cities across the country, as a group of voters, black women, has been crucial in recent Democratic wins. Next, I talk with a group of women in Detroit, what they say they learned from the 2016 election and why they say they've been ignored for too long.
Sit. If you can train Oxford to sit, sit. You can train yourself to cook with less oil.
Well, writer and singer Ed Sheeran's songs are often played at weddings, and now possibly his own. Sheeran has announced he's engaged to longtime girlfriend Cherry Seaborn.
The two met in grade school when they were just 11 years old. They started dating in 2015. The engagement comes after a successful year for Sheeran. The Grammy winner was Spotify's most streamed artist of 2017. It's a great song.
No beautiful song to accompany Derek Van Dam here. He's talking about a fierce winter storm.
No good song for you there.
No, I'm in love with your winter.
There off the top of my head there. Not quick enough on my feet, I guess. Yeah, it is. The big story here is the blizzard across the central U.S. That's going to not bring any Ed Sheeran songs to people's minds, I don't think, today. But that's the topic this afternoon, or this morning, I should say. And the blizzard warning is just being hoisted for parts of Colorado, into Kansas, as well as Nebraska, northwest Iowa, and into southern sections of Minnesota. So over the next 12 hours, we have the potential for a foot or more of snow. That snow gradient is really going to be tight, though, across Minneapolis. So if you're traveling in or out of the Twin Cities, the potential exists for a foot of snow, but the snow line could be just to your south, and that could really change things up, whether or not you have cancellations or delays at the airport. So stay tuned. Ahead of it, though, we do have the potential for severe weather. Look at that line of storms that is projected to develop later this afternoon. Eastern Texas, western sections of Arkansas into southeastern Oklahoma, even portions of Louisiana. Damaging winds, isolated tornadoes, and the potential for large hail. Behind that, dry line moves through. We have a lot of strong southerly winds that will bring warm temperatures and very low humidity across this region. That means we have a high fire danger for much of the Texas and Oklahoma panhandle. Speaking of hot, we bring you to the southern hemisphere. This is Australia, of course, and they have been scorching over the past several days. In fact, temperatures there in terms of Celsius have been running 5 to 10 degrees above average for New South Wales into portions of Victoria and Queensland. You can see the temperatures there, but the problem when you combine the hot temperatures and very dry conditions, you get limit the potential for bushfires across this area, and that's exactly what we've seen just outside of the Sydney region. We have severe fire danger in place for that particular area. In fact, let's take you to Sydney, where you can see some of the visuals coming out of that particular region. This is the Royal Park, just outside of Royal National Park, I should say, that was closed down on Saturday due to this bushfire that's continuing to burn. You can see them trying to extinguish the flames with some of the water bombing choppers there. They had evacuations, and fortunately no one has been injured, but of course you can imagine what this means for the national parks.
All right.
Australia has been taking the heat.
They really have, yeah. It's been several weeks of this.
Derek, thank you.
All right.
Thank you for watching. See you in the newsroom. I'm Natalie Allen.
And I'm George Howell. For our viewers here in the United States, New Day is next. For our viewers around the world, Aaron Burnett out front is ahead. Thank you for watching CNN, the world's news leader.
Audio